Hello, welcome to Dragonboat Dynasty, a podcast where I share my experience in building, coaching, and scaling a Dragonboat team. My name is Sean, and I'm the outgoing head coach of Argo Naga Dragonboat team with over 100 active members based in Malaysia. Back in mid-2023, we spent a weekend in Muar. It was a very small race, but it posed a new set of challenges that we usually wouldn't be faced with. One of the biggest variable or biggest hurdle in this race was that we were constantly paddling against the tide. Not constantly, but we were actually in the river. So there are certain times when we are against the tide and certain times where we are with the tide. Because of that, certain time of the day, the water feels a lot lighter than other times. We were doing the test paddling the day before, and we were doing a bit of testing. And during that time, we were actually paddling against a very hard receding tide. And most of our boat opted out of a set strategy. So a set strategy is where usually for distances which is very short, like 250, we have a strategy that is already preset. X amount of this, X amount of that, X amount of this, X amount of that. And then once we finish that, we should be able to maybe in the flexibility of 10, 20 strokes, we will be able to finish that distance. But because the water condition was so volatile, we all opted out of the set strategy and we decided to go for a float strategy where the steerer will call the commands at a certain distance. Because the steerers have a bird's eye view of what's going on, they can use certain benchmarks to determine where we are and how much we have to go and then make certain strategic calls. So we said, okay, we're going to go on a float strategy. Steerer, which is me, I will decide what to do. So I haven't been steering for boat A in a very long time because I've been actively trying to bring other steerers up to take up all these responsibilities. So in order to do that, I cannot be hovering around. I have to give them space to do the things that they need to do. And on the first heat of the race day, the boat that I was steering decided to use a set strategy, which means that they did not want me to make any calls. For some reason, they think, I don't know, if the water is not the tide is not strong enough, or they thought that they could not rely on my command, or they would rather have it be set by themselves. I don't know. I didn't ask them, and I was totally against this idea because you can't always determine or you can't always decide that it's 250 meters. It could have easily been a 500-meter race because of the water condition. I allowed them to go ahead with it anyway because at that point of time, I'm all about allowing everybody to make their mistakes and, gain their learnings in their own way. During the first heat, the boat completed their race start and maintenance section at only 120 meters. This section of the strategy should have brought them to around 160 to 170 meters. So they fell short of 40 meters. And they had a very long all-out to push for. So they were already going for all-out, which means they are really ramping up their stroke rate. And they are only at 120 meters. I was properly worried that they would gas out before the finish line because I know for sure that they will. 120 meters for 250, so that means you have a proper 125 meters to go or 130 meters to go. That's crazy. That's crazy distance for all out. And you're against the tide. So I looked around and I saw one boat competing very strongly against us. They were maybe they were one or two rows in front of us or maybe just right next to us. And the other boat was actually 1.5 to 2 boats behind us. So they were already straggling. They were struggling so badly. And we only needed to win one boat to progress to the next stage. So I called the boat to maintain. So I usually call maintain when I want them to control their stroke rate, not to increase it, not to decrease it, just control it. And I had a hunch that if I did not call it, the pacers would increase their stroke rate to compete with the other boat next to us. Because knowing one of the pacer, he has a tendency to do that. And if they were to do that, the boat will get out of control and there's a chance that we might lose the entire heat, which means that we could not progress to the next stage. And in the worst case scenario, they may have understood the command as easy. Maybe in the in the midst of all the chaos and everything, they could have heard it wrongly and they could have called easy. And which they shouldn't, because we haven't reached the finish line. They know where the finish line is. It is filled with buoys. Even if it did happen, let's just say, right? They would have at most lost a couple of strokes, 1 or 2 strokes, a small price to pay compared to the alternative of gassing up before the race and risking losing everything. So I made the call to call for maintain. And true enough, 2 of the paddlers stopped paddling. They got confused and they eventually regained back their strokes. So they kind of lost about 2 strokes at most. And we kept our second position very safe. Right after we crossed the finish line, they threw their paddles, they turned around and they yelled at me. They said, "Why the fuck did the steerer call easy?" My immediate reaction was to ask them to control their temper. And if they don't, ask them to find another steerer to finish off the day for them. But of course, I didn't do that. It wasn't for their sake, it was for the team's sake. I had to make objective calls and I have to put my emotions aside. But if it was up to me and not the team, I would have flipped the finger at them and asked them to go and sort out their own shit by themselves. But what is more important is this opened my eyes to a new problem in the team: entitlement. This group of paddlers have been enjoying the glory and spotlight of being the team superstar for quite a while now. And they're starting to feel so powerful that they can verbally abuse anyone who prevents them from showing their power, or who they think is not up to their standard. If this is left unaddressed, it will fester out of control. The juniors are looking at them and they're looking up at them all the time. And what they do, the juniors will eventually do as well. So I suppose the best way to approach this would be to raise the abilities of the juniors so they can feel the competition. Entitlement comes because you feel there is security in your position. And as long as there is no security in your position, there's always competition involved. You would fight. And you would probably, I guess, retain some sense of humility with you. It's even better if Boat B can give them a run for their money. Because at this point of time now, Boat B is not performing very well. So they feel that, they are the only ones. The whole team relies on them. So they feel very special. But if you reach a point where Boat B competes with them and they're like a fraction of a second behind them, or maybe sometimes right in front of them all the time, they may not be so arrogant, right? I also don't want to give them the impression that I'm their enemy, because I'm not, right? What I do is to maintain the health and the longevity and the sustainability of the team. And I understand that sense of entitlement will creep up. It is a matter of time. As athletes, we know, we have faced this before. We were one of them before. And sometimes it takes a great fall and a good knock in the head to remind ourselves to always be humble. So I don't want to come across as their enemy, because I'm not their enemy. But standing on 2 opposing sides isn't a healthy and sustainable way to approach this anyway. If the next generation were to feel entitled the same way that they feel entitled, we'll be stuck in the same cycle. I think the best way to break out of it is to create stiff, healthy competition within the team. Healthy is very important. We cannot have toxic competition. And I also approached them and I talked to them about their current situation and to be aware of what's going on and how I felt about it. This is uncharted territory for me. I mean, as an athlete, I knew how it felt like, right? But as a coach, this is the first time I had to deal with this, and I don't know how to approach it in the best way. But I do believe in one thing, which is that as long as I do it from my heart, they will know that I'm not playing mind games with them. They will know that I'm not trying to manipulate them in any way. I've always approached things in a very vulnerable and honest way. And they can see my intention, why I do the things that I do. Perhaps the chances of them seeing things from my perspective will be higher. Perhaps they can start to understand and take a step back. Like, sometimes it's not so much as deliberately doing what you do, but maybe it is we don't have the awareness of what we were doing until someone tells us that, hey, this thing that you're doing is not really that good. I think you should check on it. So I hope this approach works, and I hope that they grow up to be more humble paddlers. I don't know if they are still abusing their steerers or other people in the boat, who they think that are not up to their standard, because I've been so disconnected with them. And if you ask me, no, nobody should be subject to that kind of abuse. So yeah, that's all for today. I don't know. Maybe I can come back to you again in in the future and see if things change and I'm able to find a formula to handle this sense of entitlement that is happening with a select group of team. Okay, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.